Welcome to episode 2. Today we're at the South Australian Museum in Adelaide. This museum has one of the largest collections of Australian Aboriginal artifacts in the world, and it's free to visit. It's the perfect place to explore today's topic: Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Be sure to watch until the end of the video as we take a tour of this fascinating museum. Today's episode is taken from part 1 of the Australian Citizenship Test Resource Booklet, Australian Citizenship, Our Common Bond. Remember, the citizenship test will only ask questions using the words from Our Common Bond. In this video, you'll hear some stories to help you better understand today's topic. You don't have to memorize all the stories. When you see the little picture of the Our Common Bond booklet on the screen, it means that these words have been taken directly from Our Common Bond. So this is the vocabulary that you need to remember. We're going to have a look at the paragraph about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people on page 8. Australia's first inhabitants are the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Let's take a look at the key words in this sentence. Inhabitants are people who live in a place. For example, about 27 million inhabitants currently live in Australia. First inhabitants are the first people to live in a place. They may also be called Indigenous people. Australia's first inhabitants are the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Let's say the key words together. First inhabitants, Indigenous, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Historically, Aboriginal people are from mainland Australia and Tasmania. It's important to know the difference between the words mainland and island. The mainland is the largest area of land in a place. So mainland Australia is where we now have the states of Western Australia, South Australia, Victoria, New South Wales, Queensland, the Australian Capital Territory, and the Northern Territory. An island is a smaller area of land surrounded by water. We have one island state in Australia, Tasmania. Torres Strait Islander people are from islands between the northern tip of Queensland and Papua New Guinea. They have the oldest continuous cultures and traditions in the world. The archaeological record indicates that Aboriginal people arrived in Australia between 65,000 and 40,000 years ago. Let's take a closer look at the word archaeological. Can you guess what it means? Archaeology is the study of people and artifacts from ancient times. Archaeologists dig into the earth to find items that people left behind thousands of years ago. When we study these artifacts, we learn about past cultures and how they lived. In Mungo National Park in New South Wales, archaeologists found footprints of humans who walked across the clay ground 40,000 years ago. They also found tools that the Aboriginal people used for hunting and rock carvings of animals and stories that were important to the Aboriginal people. It is important that we learn about and show respect for the history of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, as this land belongs to them and they belong to this land. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures were strong and well developed for thousands of years before anyone else arrived in Australia. 60,000 years is a very long time. For thousands of years, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people lived in small family groups linked into larger language groups called mobs. Each mob had its own language, cultural practices, and traditional lands. The lands, which are called country, were divided up using boundaries around rivers, lakes, and mountains. Each group developed different skills to adapt to the environment of its country. The land was a source of food, shelter, medicine, and tools. For this reason, each mob had a responsibility to care for its country. The mob made sure to protect the natural resources such as water and wood, and use them wisely so that the resources would be there for future generations. In your culture, do you have a special name for people in your community to help show respect? For example, brother, sister, auntie, or uncle, even if that person is not related to you by blood. Aboriginal elders are often called auntie or uncle as a way to honor their experience, wisdom, and status in the community. Exchange and trade were important parts of Aboriginal society. Trade routes connected different mobs throughout the landscape of Australia. Items that were traded included kangaroo skin, pearl shells for decorations, ochre for painting, and stone and timber for making axes and spears. Aboriginal people were traditionally hunters and gatherers who did not live in one place. They moved around their country in search of food. This picture from the South Australian Museum shows some of the tools that Aboriginal people used for hunting. In each mob, all members had special things they did to help their community function. Men hunted animals such as kangaroos, emus, birds, reptiles, and fish. Women collected fruit, honey, insects, eggs, and plants. In fertile areas, people set up camp. In desert areas, small family groups moved from waterhole to waterhole. Let's say the key words together. Mainland, island, oldest continuous culture, 60,000 years. Aboriginal people believe they are central to the creation stories of this land, and their creation stories commence with the beginning of time. These creation stories are called the Dreaming and are very important to Aboriginal people. It's part of their history, their relationship with the land, and their laws. Dreaming stories explain the Aboriginal people's understanding of how the world and life was created by the ancestor spirits. The land continues to be protected by the ancestor spirits. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have age-old beliefs and traditions that still guide them today. A corroboree is a special ceremony or gathering of Australian Aboriginal people. There is singing, dancing, music, and visual art. Corroborees are a way for Aboriginal people to connect with the dreaming, their understanding of how the world and themselves were created by ancestor spirits. Corroborees are an important way for Aboriginal people to teach younger generations about their culture, language, laws, histories, and family relationships. A smoking ceremony is an ancient custom among Aboriginal tribes. Native plants are lit with fire to make smoke. The Aboriginal people believe the smoke cleans out bad energy or bad spirits. It is a gesture of goodwill, bringing people together for healing. Smoking ceremonies are used to celebrate the birth of a child, to mark the death of someone in the community, to pay respect to the land, and to prepare the land for new use. They have a deep connection with the land, which is expressed in their stories, art, and dance. Aboriginal people do not see themselves as owning the land. Rather, they are a part of the land's living ecosystem, where all parts are equal in value. They are the custodians and caretakers of the land. Traditionally, there aren't written accounts of Aboriginal languages. Rather, Aboriginal people pass down knowledge through storytelling. Each generation learned about sources of water, seasons, animals, their history and culture through stories that were told to them by elders. Aboriginal art tells a story about the land, important events, and beliefs of the Aboriginal people. Many people often work together on a painting. It is full of symbolism. For example, the color red often represents the earth, while yellow represents the sun, energy, and warmth. Let's say the key words together. Creation stories, age-old beliefs and traditions, deep connection to the land. Indigenous cultures are diverse. If something is diverse, it includes many different types of people or things. Before the arrival of British colonists, more than 250 Indigenous Australian languages were spoken by 1 million Indigenous Australians. Indigenous cultures are an important part of Australia's national identity. Can you see the blue part of this graph? I know, it's very small. The blue represents the amount of time that Europeans, starting with colonists from Britain, have been in Australia. It's been 237 years since the British ships first landed in Australia. But for a very long time before that, the Aboriginal people lived on the land now known as Australia. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are represented on the graph in orange. We can really see just how long they have been a part of this land. You can learn more about Aboriginal culture in most places across Australia. Community centres and museums have programs that teach people about Aboriginal ways. You can learn about the Australian native plants that grow well in your area, how to plant a native garden, and forage for bush tucker, edible traditional foods. Let's say the key words together. Diverse, Indigenous cultures, Australia's national identity. Let's review the text in the paragraph about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Remember, the questions on the citizenship test will only use the words from the Our Common Bond booklet. Let's read together. It may feel a bit silly to say the words out loud, but you are more likely to remember it this way. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Australia's first inhabitants are the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, who have the oldest continuous cultures and traditions in the world. Historically, Aboriginal people are from mainland Australia and Tasmania. The archaeological record indicates that Aboriginal people arrived in Australia between 65,000 and 40,000 years ago. However, the Aboriginal people believe they are central to the creation stories of this land, and their creation stories commence with the beginning of time. Torres Strait Islander people are from islands between the northern tip of Queensland and Papua New Guinea. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have age-old beliefs and traditions that still guide them today. They have a deep connection with the land, which is expressed in their stories, art, and dance. Indigenous cultures are diverse and an important part of Australia's national identity. Let's have a look at a practice test question. Who were Australia's first inhabitants? A. The Dutch. B. The British and Irish settlers. C. The Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. D. The Spanish. Let's look at the key words in the question. First, inhabitants. There have been many people who have come to Australia at different times, but the question is asking about the first inhabitants. Let's explore the possible answers. A. The Dutch. Dutch explorers mapped and charted the Australian continent in the 1600s, but they decided not to stay in Australia, so the answer isn't A. B. The British and Irish settlers. British convicts and Irish settlers began arriving in Australia on ships in 1788, marking the start of European colonization. But this question asks us who the first inhabitants were. Indigenous people lived in Australia long before the Europeans arrived, so the answer isn't B. C. The Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Yes, we've learned in this episode that the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people were the first inhabitants of what is now known as Australia. D. The Spanish. In the early 1600s, the Spanish explorer Luis Vaz de Torres sailed through the strait separating Australia from New Guinea, now known as the Torres Strait. But like the Dutch, the Spanish decided not to stay in Australia. Perhaps they saw that it was already inhabited by the indigenous people. We can confidently say that the correct answer is C. The Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are Australia's first inhabitants. Part of becoming a citizen of Australia means learning about Australian history and its ongoing impact for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures were strong and well developed for thousands of years before anyone else arrived in Australia. In episode 3, we'll learn more about the arrival of Europeans in Australia and the devastating effects this had on the Indigenous people. According to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, only 3% of Australia's population today identify as Indigenous. Despite many challenges throughout time, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, families, and communities have survived, passing on ancient wisdom and resiliency to today's generation of Indigenous Australians. Please enjoy this video of the Australian Aboriginal Cultures exhibit from the South Australian Museum. See you in the next episode.